How's life going for the Jones of Alex? Let me know what is very important from the perspective of the great dad influence, which is your
Dad.
kids, because no one cares about you. So how are your kids doing?
Kids are doing beautifully. My daughter's learning very well how to, utilize the emotions really to get her way, which is an essential skill that I feel like all females need to know how to have.
For sure.
Um, and then the boy, he just started throwing really good karate kicks out of nowhere. So we're looking to get him into some like taekwondo or something. Because I'm not joking with you, his form and everything for like throwing these kicks, like he came up behind me and just nailed me with one in the leg, and I was like, "What the heck?" He got me good.
Hell yeah, dog. If you ask my personal opinion on like martial arts, because I dabbled a lot, I will tell you that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is broken.
Yeah,
It
yeah, it's
is
OP.
a really, really good. If you're gonna start them out with a specific martial art instead of going to a MMA school that's gonna teach them a bunch of different stuff, I would definitely go with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu over like karate or taekwondo.
I dabbled in it as well
That
in
might
the
that might
jiu-jitsu and
cause
Muay
some
Thai.
enemy
Yeah,
that cause some enemies here, but like I'm just saying, like I'm not saying those other ones aren't really insanely powerful. I'm just saying a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu you could do with very minimal likelihood of going to jail afterward.
right. Yeah, you didn't make any strikes or anything, but
Yeah, if somebody throws a swing at you and you wrap him up into the pretzel, it's very unlikely the police are going to take you. They're like, he's not bruised, he's not hurt. You know what I mean? So
he
like you
was
can
hurting.
literally, yeah, he was definitely hurting. But the thing is there's nothing, permanent for them to really charge you on. Even if he took you to court, like there's nothing permanent to charge you on. Like I'm saying that like from a parent's perspective, I think that's also a very good skill to teach them is like I said, how to pretzel people up. It's almost like a very good, especially for people, at least with my ideology, it's a very good way of fighting in a more pacifist way, if that makes sense.
Escalate, don't give someone some like permanent damage because you can be really trained in something like Muay Thai, which is when I was dabbling in MMA, that was what I was most interested in. But like, if you might be really good at Muay Thai, but if you get in a fight with someone, you're probably going to jail, and also you might be like, even if you don't kill the person, hospitalize them, something like that, you might break something on them that's going to affect them for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I wrestled in high school, and the wrestling is a lot of that stuff. If you didn't have
Hmm.
that mat there, you could kill somebody. Even with the mat there, people die. Like you're hitting people with the world, I think, to quote Joe Rogan, is like, because he even like there was one of his MMA commentaries where he was saying that he thought that actually the most broken fighting style is Greco-Roman wrestling, just because the kind of stuff that you're doing, you can kill somebody if you do this shit in the world. Like
Well,
almost all of it.
also,
Like because most of it's about dropping people on their back. And if you drop people on their back in the world and their head hits the concrete, that's over. Like you can said, hospitalize, kill people. You know, my signature move was the fireman carry slam, but I would pick people all the way up, and I'm 6'3", so I
that's a
would
big
pick
fall.
people up and then slam them from 6 foot in the air. And you know what I'm saying? On a mat, that knocks the wind out of you for 5, 6 seconds. On concrete, that'll kill you.
Yeah. I remember
There's no way you're
broken skull,
surviving
broken
that.
neck, broken spine, like
Yeah, that the
a whole
whole
handful sort of things can
backside
happen.
of you is just hitting the ground at, an insane level of force. With the mat, it makes it concussive and not, what's the other word? Blunt force. So like it transfers to trauma in a different way. But yeah, even still, that concussive force is horrible. Like, I learned it from somebody doing it to me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you get slammed 3, 4 times, you just don't want to fight anymore.
Mm-mm.
It's all gone. And you know what I'm saying? So I use that a lot because I was too damn big to really get up underneath people like a lot of these smaller wrestler dudes were. And so that was my move, was just pick a fight, get them to go after me, and then fireman carry them.
Yeah,
And then like just get them tired. You know, you drop them 4 or 5 times on the fireman carry, you can pin whatever you want. Then you get 2 points per drop. So
just racking
three
up.
points for the pin. Yeah, just racking up points to win the match. Just win that meet real quick. I'm gonna win the match anyway because you won't be able to breathe while I'm pinning you. So, but yeah, no, I did all of that, but like I got really good at a lot of that stuff, but that was some of the reason why I wanted to learn a lot of the other mixed martial arts stuff, was because like, yeah, like I sat there and thought about it. I was like, I can't use any of this. I will kill someone.
Yeah,
Like literally,
yeah,
I
you
will
got to
kill
be
like
careful.
if you think about all of the moves that you learn in wrestling, like it is insanely deadly stuff. And I don't know, there's something, and I think that's also part of the reason, like, why if you see people who actually know how to fight, they don't want to as much.
Yeah,
You
well, yeah,
know what I'm
because they're
saying?
aware
It's
of
like,
like the trouble that they can get into by like.
I don't even mean the trouble. I mean, it's just like you're aware of the damage that you actually could do
That's
to
what I mean.
somebody.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
You know,
like
not even trouble from like the law or something, just like that on your conscience. Like I
mm,
could really hurt somebody. And like the thing is like I hurt people personally when I was wrestling on accident. And it's like I could only imagine the kind of damage I could actually do to somebody on purpose from the kind of like that those kind of ideas. It's just, yeah, I think that is why I honestly think it's a good thing to teach kids for that reason, because I think it also shows them like they'll go out there, see some little tiny kid, you know, come up to do the martial arts and be like, "Oh, I got this," and then just get their ass whipped. You know what I'm saying? Because this
there's a
kid
valuable
knows
lesson
something.
there.
And that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like the thing about martial arts that I think is so beautiful is it's just you can't just size somebody up and be like, I can take them. You don't know that, dog.
Mhm.
Anybody could know anything, and that's another knowledge that like anybody who's done a lot of training in martial arts knows. It's like, I don't know what this guy knows. I know what I know, but I don't really know what this guy knows. So to assume I can beat him is a very hefty assumption, you know. So I do think, I think it's a I would heavily advocate for martial arts training for kids.
And for adults for that
And
matter. Like it's really
I
good for
would
kids,
say
but
for
everyone.
sure,
Yeah.
for sure. But I think you need to do that for your daughter as well, for sure.
I want my daughter
And
to know Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
her, you definitely can teach her Greco-Roman wrestling,
Yeah.
because a lot of that I don't care, kill them. They shouldn't be trying to fight you. All right, well, we gotta we gotta get into. I was thinking, part of the reason I wanted to bring you on is because you're one of my more conservative friends, and while you are conservative, you're not a nitwit. So me and you can have a lot of conversations about like what I like about what the guys are doing, and what I don't like. And you're pretty reasonable, and you'll have that discussion, and that's what I admire about you. So I wanted to kind of talk about the whole situation with Charlie Kirk. I personally didn't agree with him, but anybody who gives a shot to, my team is always going to hold a small special place in my heart. Like, Piers Morgan, I disagree with him on a lot of shit, but he platforms my homies. You know what I mean? Lex Friedman, obviously, I agree with on very little. Again, he platforms my homies. So like, there's something to like, I don't know, the guys that'll have a discussion, that I think that there's something higher there. Like me and you've kind of had this, you know, discussion more extraneously, where we're talking about like the importance of certain aspects versus others, right? Like we can disagree on healthcare, and that's not really that relevant. Like, not to say we can't have that discussion and we shouldn't have that discussion, but it's really not that important in the grand scheme of what's going on in our country and the world today. You know what I mean? Like the to me, the foundations are actually under attack. The foundations of freedom of speech, the foundations of open discussion, and the ability to agree to disagree, the ability to have conversations with people you completely and vehemently disagree with. I think those are some of the big foundational things that, like, if they break apart, all of these other things don't really matter. And, the type of people who are preserving that, to me, should be upheld at a certain regard. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I basically agree about all of that. That's why it's especially like so heartbreaking to see this
Yeah, I
happen to
give
someone
that to
like
like lefties. I give that to like Anna Kasparian and Cenk and all these. Like, I give that to lefties, righties, libertarians, anybody who'll just listen to anybody like, that's one of the reason I actually have a lot of respect for Scott Horton and antiwar.com, because it's not just libertarian. It's ran by libertarians. Yeah, but you'll have the most leftiest of the lefty person, like Taylor Lorenz will write a freaking anti-war paper, and they'll be like, "Run that shit." You
yeah,
know
I
what I'm
mean,
saying?
as long as
And
it fits
she's
the
as
goal of
left as
their
they come. Yeah, and so, like, that's kind of my thing is I have this I think there's this idea that we forgot about in our country, that, like, we don't all agree on everything, but that's why we have kind of a voting process. I mean, even when it comes to the states, it's like, we don't all have, like, this whole, like, party thing has corrupted a lot of this, in my opinion, because there is something to, it's like, well, Republicans don't have to have a position on Israel. There could be some Republicans that are for and some against. This is something the Libertarian Party seems to absolutely recognize, specifically on abortion. There are some libertarians that are for and some that are against. There's no need to split the party over it. You know what I'm saying? There's no need to push those people out and say you're not libertarians. I think I think there's something, to this caucus that I think we really need to accentuate, and this response. So I think you could talk about, like, the Pam Bondi thing in a good way.
oh, the Pam Bondi thing. I had a message earlier that I sent the team over at Civility and Politics earlier. I The way Pam Bondi is presenting it, if that is actually what she's presenting, is the worst marketing strategy ever, which isn't surprising at all coming from this administration, especially including Pam Bondi. Like, this was I don't even know how many times she's dropped the ball as far as messaging so far, and it's not even a year into this administration. So yeah, she comes out and says, "Well, we need to crack down on this hate speech." And I don't know if she's aware of who the base is for like the Republican Party currently, but you immediately hear like the phrase hate speech, you should be against it because it's just some phrase that can just capture whatever the hell you want it to capture. I mean, when, the leftists were using it, they were using it to, shout people down and silence them because they were saying that they were bigots or racists or anything like that. That's what makes a phrase like that so dangerous, is because it's a word you can kind of change what it actually means. It doesn't mean one.
It's subjective. Like, if you think about it, like, me and you have talked about this numerous times in group as well, but, like, that's part of the reason why, when I designed the group, I was very specific about the wording that I used and wanted to make sure that it would be objective across political spectrums.
Right.
Does that make sense? So, like, you can objectively apply this. It wasn't a subjective call on anything. And I did that intentionally because I didn't want there to be any kind of ambiguity, right? And there's something to, like like I said, having these ironclad principles that don't have any real subjectivity to them, that should, in my opinion, ground how you go about it. This is kind of what I say is like multiculturalism is a culture, if that makes sense. And that culture itself is necessary to contain, certain things for it to work. You know, we've done this experiment for a long time, and people think that, oh, we really started it in the civil rights era. It's like, no, actually, if you go back further, there was the whole like Irish versus the Italians versus the Jews versus the, you know, like all of these different ethnic groups were having issues with each other. Right? So if you think about this, there's something to that debate that actually caused this to be able to kind of work itself out. You have to have concrete core principles. See, that's the point that I'm kind of getting at, that we can all rally around as Americans or as, people of Earth, humanity, of course, as well, but like there has to be this rallying culture. It doesn't mean there can't be other things on the surface. And I think that's what a lot of people miss when when we say like, like a multicultural thing. It's like even with a multicultural society, you have to have a culture that everybody subscribes to.
Yeah.
It's what keeps the infighting. And to me, the best one to actually try to build on top of a multicultural society is, a like I said, a culture of debate and free expression and free, exchange of ideas. The point I'm getting at too is that this isn't just a legal issue, and I think a lot of people kind of see it that way. While I do agree that obviously, if the state is to get involved, like with Pam Bondi, I obviously think that, that's crazy, but I also think we have to keep this culture. This is where I say with MAGA, which I have seen, at least from what Twitter shows me, as much real life as that is, I have seen that a lot of MAGA is snapping off at Pam Mondi. They're over here like, this chick sounds like a leftist. She's a DEI hire. You know what I mean? Like they're going off on Pam Bondi, and I live to see that. I think it is beautiful. I want to see. This is the kind of thing that, like I said, it also inspired me during the quote unquote 12-day war. It seems to me that MAGA is doing a better job than they could be doing, but I think they should be doing a better job than they are doing
I'd say they're
with
doing a much
actually
better
keeping
job than
keeping
like
Trump and the administration in line with what they actually wanted. It wasn't we didn't want vengeance, if you're MAGA, at least from what I've listened to, is like we don't want vengeance, we want free speech. We don't want to cancel them. We want everybody to be able to talk. You know what I mean? That's what I heard from everyone who is pushing for Trump, everyone who is pushing for Musk controlling Twitter. That was what all of this was sold as. So when you let go of that, you are losing the high ground. And I think that is an insane idea to do. Like, you know, what do you think about that? Especially in
I
the name of Charlie Kirk, who is pretty adamant about exactly what I'm talking about.
that is actually exactly what I was about to say. You saw a lot of, like these leftists making these posts being like, oh, like this was very ironic how this happened. But what would be actually probably a more substantial and painful, because it would affect everyone, irony out of this is if the effect that was actually implemented from it was a chilling of speech and a chilling of debate, which was the exact opposite thing that he actually stood for. Um, which is to say basically exactly what you just said about it. I mean, it's not what Charlie Kirk would have wanted.
It's
I
like
I heard an idea getting
proceedings
floated
wage war
around.
in behalf of Dave Smith.
Yeah, the I heard an idea floated about making like a national remembrance day, um, and making it like National Debate Day to kind of in honor of him. Um, I feel like that would be a great idea because, like, if you it doesn't really matter how you think about him. That's something I've been talking to you and the rest of the group members, as far as I think about this. What he really did was platformed people that he disagreed with. He would go out there where he knew he was in hostile territory, which is college campuses. Conservative minded people generally, you can assume most of the people that are there don't really like you. And he went to those places intentionally to find people that disagreed with him so that he could debate them. So yeah, it would be a much better way to honor him by doing something like that as opposed to cracking down on hate speech, probably.
Well, this is the thing that I would always argue is this is why I also say that it's always bad to celebrate figures. Now, if we look at like some of these guys that we celebrate, if we're being honest, they weren't angels. Nobody was an angel that we could talk about. Well, I'm sure we can pull up pretty good amount of quotes from basically everyone we celebrate about how bad they were. And this is why I say generally the better course of action is to judge, celebrate actions and not people. And that's why I say like having it as a debate day, I think is a, good way to do it. Because like I said, it's celebrating the action of debate, not necessarily everything this guy did. And I think that is why leftists, libertarians, everybody should kind of get on board with such an idea. Because like I said, this is going to be something that contributes to cooling the temperature down. And, like always talking and debating is going to cool that temperature down because most hatred in the world comes from ignorance. Anybody who has half a piece of knowledge in their noggin knows that. So I think the more that we understand each other, the better that we are going to coexist. This is the whole reason that I started the group that we have was because I wanted people to understand each other. And the group that we had before, me and you were in, it didn't seem like it was about understanding everyone. It was just like we want to win. And for me, that's the reason why I said I wanted this group. It's not about me winning the argument. While I like to have the right ideas, that's the point, you know, and I think I have the right ideas. That's the point. I know other people do too. And I want to understand how you got to where you're at versus how I got to where I'm at and see where that route is different. You know, how do you have a different perspective of me? Why do you have a different perspective than me? And I think that, when you start to understand people a little bit more, you'll actually start to get a little bit more camaraderie with them. This is why, a lot of people have criticized like Anna Kasparian and all that because she's hanging out with Tucker Carlson or whatever. And I'm just like, no, what it is she has sat down with somebody she disagreed with. She doesn't agree with his position, but now she kind of understands it a little better. And she's like, it's not as crazy as I thought. I don't agree with it, but I get it. And I think that's where, and if you listen to Tucker Carlson talk about Anna Kasparian, he'll say the same damn thing about her positions. He'll be like, it's not that I agree with her, but I get where she's coming from. And like there's a difference of how those people can interact when you have that. Because I think deeply, really deeply, and this goes back to when we were kids, we really just want to be understood and taken seriously. It's not that we care so much about other people agreeing with us. Some people do. I'm not saying that's, not cool, but I think it's really that we care about people actually understanding what we're saying. And the reason why agreement is so good is because we know that they understand what we're saying. But if you've ever had somebody agree with you and you don't feel like they understand you, think about that. Does it feel the same as somebody fully agreeing with you and like, yeah, I get what you're saying. I agree with you. You see what I'm
No,
saying?
yeah, it's never
It's
the
not
same.
the same. So I think it's really, like I said, it's about being understood way more than it is about being the idea exactly being accepted by the other party. If that makes sense. I think that is what we really crave. And like I said, I think it really goes back to when we were young kids, and you come up to your parents and you have something to say, or you come up to any adult, you have something to say, and you have an opinion or an idea about something, you're just written off because you're just a stupid kid, right? And if you think
Yeah,
back when you were a kid, the adults that didn't do that, the ones that did take you seriously, those were the adults that you took seriously.
that's one way to look at it, but like
And
the other thing
this
included in that,
dynamic also exists in adults. The people that take you seriously, even if they disagree with you, are the people you take seriously.
yeah, yeah, that's basically what I was gonna say. Like it's also just like the feeling of knowing that your ideas are, the other person's at least respecting you enough and respecting the ideas that you have enough to take them seriously and not just to dismiss them outright or I don't know, punish you for it. Because since we're on the topic of Charlie Kirk here, um, you know, it's ultimately what he was met with.
Let me look up something. Go ahead and talk about what you want to talk about on Charlie Kirk, because I want to look up some statistics.
I think there's a lot of things happening right now. Something I feel like that this is really showing is once again, you have like two different sides of how they feel about him, and they both have their own entirely different ideas of who he was and what he did. Um, that's a really dangerous thing, and it's kind of a natural effect of, all the algorithms that everyone is interacting with on the social media apps these days, particularly with, like the short format videos. So, someone will get 20, 30 different opinions, 20 different, like sources of information. And the other side of that issue is getting an entirely different story from the same amount of sources. So you'll be like, hey, this is what everyone is saying. Everyone I see is saying this. And I feel like it plays into kind of like leftover, like tribal mentality that like humans have where they're like, hey, everyone around me, inside of this box at least this is what they're all saying, and then you take that on as your own idea. So that's one of the aspects of the reaction. The other thing that I really wanted to focus on during this podcast was it's just the idea of anyone who's been on social media, they've seen how the right is reacting to this. I think what's affecting people that are more conservatively minded more is the reaction, not necessarily what happened. It's seeing thousands of people you're friends with, family that are actually celebrating this happening. And that is such a scary thing as someone who identifies definitely more on the conservative side of thinking about things. Where I'm like, I'm not going to name the person, of course, but like I had a friend was best friends with my wife for years, was best friends with me for years, and she's suddenly online talking about how like this was a good start. And I'm just like, wow, like I sat down and shared meals with you. I was generous to you. I thought, that was a mutual thing. And now you're here saying that like people like me should, be executed publicly. And it's a really, I don't know if it's true or if it's just like performative, like I said, for social media. But either way, it's so dark, man. And
I
that's
think
what a
there's
lot
a
of
little bit of
conservatives are
both.
seeing.
I think
Yeah.
there's a little bit of both. And, as I've said before, I'm an extremist. I think free speech is all speech. Outside of direct calls for violence, I would argue, free speech is, all speech. So, like, yeah, if you want to have whatever, whatever opinion, I mean, even celebrating somebody's death, I think it's completely disgusting. I honestly think that it's actually bad for your soul, you know? So, I don't think it's a good thing to do. There's a lot of things that I don't think are good things to do that I think you should be free to do. So, yeah, I I don't see the difference in this and what most people consider other hate speech. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, I agree with what you're saying, right? On how that could how someone could feel about that. But, like, again, it's one of those things. If you think about this argument that you're making, it's identical to the argument that people make about, like, people saying racist shit online. It's like, yeah, this guy is he's over here saying the N-word in a video online, and then I got to go to the DMV and he's the guy that's doing my license, or I got to, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so like that is the point that other people are making when it comes to like race and other, trans issues. It's like, hey, I'm a trans person and I've seen this person saying really hateful stuff about trans people. And so I'm scared to be around people who say stuff like that. And it's like, okay, that's understandable. Like, you know, agree with the stuff or not, that is a human being, and I can see how if people are saying really hateful stuff about you, that would make you feel uneasy, but when I think about this kind of stuff, I always think about Thomas Jefferson where he says, dangerous freedom over, peaceful tyranny.
Right.
So
That's definitely something to keep in mind.
there, as has been said by the right through this entire time, freedom of speech is freedom to offend.
And getting back to what you were saying about how like the reaction to Pam Bondi on that thing by at least I would say like a majority of the people that would be included in like the MAGA base really pushing back on the idea of hate speech even being something that the government should be involved in policing and defining even.
Well, this is kind of what I'm saying is I'm saying also this isn't just solely a government issue. This is a cultural issue. We
Yeah,
also, as a
yeah,
culture, have to be able to go, hey, look, this guy at MSNBC, yeah, he said something horrible, but he has an opinion. You know what I mean? And I don't think he should get fired for his opinion because I don't want the Fox News guy to get fired for some opinion later. I don't want him to get fired for an opinion. I want him to be fired because he's bad at his job, if he's bad at his job.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So like it's that simple. Like we have to actually also kind of have a culture of enforcement for this. You know what I mean? Of saying, no, we're not going to tolerate this even from, private individuals, you know, uh, the top down force. Now, the bottom up force is a completely different thing. And this is something that I've tried to explain to people as well. It's like if there's a movie, right, that people don't want to see, then there's a movie that people don't want to see. That's bottom up force. But if you have some guy who's an executive who cuts a movie because somebody is upset, that's top down. You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of what I'm saying. We have to reject that. We really do. I don't have a problem with the bottom up stuff. Where, it's like, hey, I don't like what this comedian says, so I'm not going to watch that comedian. I don't like what this director makes as movies, so I'm not watching this director. You know what I mean? I'm not opposed to that kind of, movement because a boycott is not the same as canceling. And I think a lot of people really miss that. And I think the cancel part is cancerous even when it's done privately.
So how would you view like based on how you're thinking about that, how would you view something like the silencing of Charlie Kirk with a bullet, because that's technically not something it's coming from someone that's clearly willing to resort to violence to stop someone from speaking, but so like in effect it's definitely something top down,
Well, yeah,
but
obviously that would be, but like I said, I don't think the biggest issue is the cancellation of his voice, and that was something I was going to get into a little later, but like I think we have the biggest issue is this, I got it right here, statistics. Lowers test scores and a higher drop up risk, about 2 times the rate of most children, 2 to 2.5 times higher odds of anxiety, depression, or conduct issue, which I would argue is probably higher in these kids' individual case. They have a higher risk of teen pregnancy, 70%, incarceration, unemployment, and lower adult well-being. Like we're talking about, are we going to sit here and be honest? We're going to say, really, the people that were hurt the most, and I think even if we could bring Charlie back with a Ouija board for 20 minutes to ask him the question, I think he would agree with me on this. There are two people in this world that were hurt most by that, and that was his two children. You know, the fact that they now don't have a father. This is why when everybody's like, why does it matter that he's a father? That's why. That's why. It's that simple, man. Like there is a mountain of evidence that says even if you have a crappy, barely present father, it's better than having no father at all. Like there is a mountain of evidence for this. These kids were denied it. And I'm sorry, again, you might disagree with his beliefs, but I don't think anyone would look at his beliefs and go, this is going to cause him to be a really horrible father. It's like, no, that's probably going to be beliefs that cause him to really care and try to raise his kids with love. Right? So,
which it seems like, at least from the outside, granted, I'm not gonna even attempt to get into like trying to like psychoanalyze him and like try to paint him as like a bad guy, but like literally from if you just go by his words, what his goals were, the trajectory of his life, him being such a passionate guy. I mean, the whole Turning Point USA thing, like he started that as an 18-year-old, you know, like he he was obviously very passionate about these things. If he wasn't, like, I don't know, he wasn't a late starter, like it's not like this is something he just found out about recently that he's really into. This was who he was, and it was his goal from the start. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't think you could really say that he was anything but a good father, especially if you look at the heartbreaking details from this assassination, how his daughter reacted to it, man, is I have this problem where I see something, we've talked about this before. I'm a much more reactionary person than you are, and like when I just hear this stuff about like how his daughter was terrified after the shooting, and the first thing that she went to was like, "Hey, I'm scared. Where's daddy?" Man, that makes my blood boil about like the people that did this, because like his daughter's life is changed for the rest of it.
and
The rest of
that's
her
kind
life is
of
going to be
that's
different.
exactly the point that I'm getting at. Like I really think that that's the biggest loss. Truthfully, like I said, maybe it has a lot to do with my kid supremacist outlook. I really care about the kids more than anybody else, but like, those kids are literally almost exactly the same age of my kids. You know, unlikely that they'll even remember him. And that's just so tragic,
And it's almost worse that they'll have like, all of this content to look back on to see the man that he was, and like the man that they like could have had access to as their father. Because he seemed like a guy that, like, well, I mean, if he's gonna handle a random college kid by hearing them out and talking to them, trying to understand them, telling them what he thinks, like you put that into a more like compassionate circumstance with it being like a father and his kids, like you have to imagine like he would have been the type of dad that would have been like hearing his kids out, especially when they got later in life and were struggling with things. And yeah, it's just
yeah.
it's so tragic, man. That's why I had such a hard line stance on this when it first came out, because like no, if you like have anything to say other than this being a tragedy, like you're not seeing it for what it is. It really is just a tragedy. Um,
Yeah.
it's that on so many levels.
Yeah, and call me crazy, but I could see it if he was like an actual official in something, it'd be a little bit different. But it's like the dude just debated. Like an official, like they actually have power to enact policies that you disagree with, and I don't condone it, but at least there's somewhat of an argument there. Hey, well, we have the right to bear arms to resist tyranny, and this guy's tyrannical. So, like, there's an argument there. But, like, I don't think it's justified. I don't think it's enough of an argument. But because that's kind of the point that, again, me and you have had before is the point of democracy is so we don't have to kill each other to get different ideas in place. And if we lose that, then what's the point? At
No,
that
yeah,
point,
yeah.
like,
Bullets
let's
start
just have a
flying, ideas
king
stop
or
flying.
whatever. Like, why Why have the debate? Why, if this is what we're gonna do is kill each other, then what's the point in even talking any of it out? Let's just get rid of all of the democracy. There's no need to vote because you're just gonna kill the people who vote different. So what's the point, right? This is what Hitler said when Hitler took over. This is fascism that we're talking about,
Right.
you
And I
know?
think that's
And
not I think a lot of people are missing that, or maybe it's like pathologized into something where they're like, well, I'm fighting fascism, so I'm going to do that by being a fascist. But
well, I mean, Hitler, the reason he said he was doing what he was doing was because he was fighting communism.
right.
And so, like I said, again, the thing about, Newton's law of politics, is that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And, even if you don't succeed from the left, you are likely to provoke that from the right.
Yeah, especially when things
You
like this
know,
happen, which
so
is one
this
of the
is,
things that I consider myself definitely a more like libertarian, like freedom oriented traditionalist than a typical conservative. But the thing that I'm most scared about this is two different things that actually reminded me of the thing I wanted to mention earlier. I'm terrified that there's going to be a retaliatory thing that happens. I'm very scared of that, and that this just escalates and keeps turning into tit for tat violence, one side to the other, because that you know well, that gets to what you were just saying. That's the end of democracy right there. But the other thing is you do things like this, and there is definitely an element in the Republican Party that can turn very authoritarian very fast. And when you give them ammunition like this, you're going to get the exact thing that you're claiming to fight against, and you're going to get it a lot harder, which which it just sucks. And I don't want that. And I don't want the first thing that I mentioned, the retaliatory violence. I don't want any of that. And I think a lot of people, within the MAGA base probably, I'd hope at least don't want either of those things. So it's
yeah.
not good. It's not good for anything. It's not good for either side.
I will address two whataboutisms that seem to be coming up with this topic. There's some Democratic senators that were attacked, and I obviously don't agree with that. And a lot of people bring up Gaza, and I would just definitely encourage people to look at all the past videos that I've done. Completely obviously against that and have specifically named that numerous times as an issue. The thing about that is this is something I do agree with that argument to an extent where it's like there is a need to condemn political violence generally, and that includes war, because
Yeah,
war is political violence. You're
large
talking
scale
about
political violence.
That's what you're talking about, and they're literally assassinating people openly. Like, what do like, if you're against this, why are you against it sometimes and not all times, right? That's a fair question. So I think the best answer, this is why I also say when you're coming at things, it's good to come at things with ironclad principles because yeah, when there is aboutism for my ideas because I believe that those ideas all the time. You know, so
I know we're probably gonna have to wrap this up soon, but there's another thing I wanted to get into. And it's another thing that we've talked about before. I think maybe even on one of the podcasts, but we've talked about the like mainstream conservative like pundit sort of criticism of the leftists that are at least vocally in support of Gaza having liberation from Israel and the ongoing attacks over there and the occupation. And conservatives will mock that and be like, well, these people over here in Gaza, like, it's illegal to be like you over there. They throw you off the side of the building despite, not really having too much evidence of that happening. A lot of those same people are the people that are, celebrating this assassination. And I think there's like talk about double standards right there, because it is a good thing that those people are fighting for people that, think that their lifestyle is something that you might be put to death for, right? And then when it's happening in our own country, right, they turn into sadists. And it's crazy to see that. It's like, wait, no, no, no. You guys were so right here. And then you lost the plot. And then you entirely lost the plot when it came to this guy. Why? You know?
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly my point. Is it's kind of like, and this is a something I brought up in the mod chat. Is it's like, you can't sit here and say, well, look, Israel's assassinating all these journalists, and that's wrong, and then turn around and go, but Charlie Kirk's okay.
No.
Well, like,
No,
I
you
mean,
can't.
if go do a little research, some of these journalists, you know, like here, let's do a quick rundown of the situation in Gaza. All international journalists are blocked, right? So a lot of the way that news is getting out is from Palestinian citizens, right? So a lot of these guys have have the ability to now work for like Reuters or whatever, as long as they can get their credentials in check, they have the right training, all of that. So they're basically recruiting Palestinian citizens to do this because they can't send anybody in from anywhere else. Does
No.
that make any sense? So they'll literally be like, "Well, we have text messages or we have WhatsApp messages of this guy supporting Hamas." And it's like, if you have an oppressed people and you have a guy that's attacking the oppressor, they're going to see it that way. It's kind of the same
Yeah.
reason why, whether or not you agree with the IDF, a lot of these people who are traumatized from October 7th really support the IDF in what they're doing now because of the same kind of dynamic. And if you look at the news and you say, hey, if the news journalist, if the journalist is supportive of the bad guys, then we can't then we can bomb them. Then you're opening up every single Israeli outlet that's supportive of the IDF. Do you understand what you're talking about here? It's obvious that a news that's coming from an area, people in that area are generally going to support, the militant force for that area. You know what I'm saying? So yes, a large portion of these people do support Hamas, right? As the Israelis will charge. But the thing about that is if you know anything about international law, that's irrelevant. What's
It's like,
relevant is if they are a part of combat.
yeah.
That's what's
Yeah. Are they
relevant.
holding a machine gun and shooting it at you? Are they,
Are they
are they
shooting
planting
rockets?
bombs in
Are
your
they
buildings?
exactly? Are they planting mines? What are they doing? Oh, they're reporting and they're critical of you and they support the bad guys. That's how news and media works from the opposition. It's always going to be the way that it works. Our news does that too. Do you think our news is totally unbiased, or do you think it's supportive of the U.S., in foreign wars? Obviously, if you're an American and you're reporting on America, you're going to be supportive of America. Like
We do
it's,
have some pretty good diversity in that. It's definitely
I'm
one of
not
the strengths
saying
we have
that,
over here.
yeah, but I'm just
I get what you're
saying
saying,
it's
though. I get your point.
especially in the middle of a conflict. You say you had that diversity. That diversity did not exist in 2002.
No.
You see what I'm
They got in
saying?
line.
It did not exist in 2003. That's where we are in Israeli society. That's where we are in Palestinian society. You see what I'm saying? So the idea of what you're talking about is just ignorant of how conflicts work in and of themselves. Of course there's people but that's not relevant. What's relevant is, are they participating in combat activities? That is what's relevant. And Charlie Kirk was not. So for the same reason, it is a crime. You don't kill people who have different opinions. This is why this is just the way it is. It's like, as long as they're talking, as long as they're broadcasting and they're having a debate, cool. They're in the right zone of,
Yeah.
getting somewhere.
I, you really can't simultaneously say that like what Israel is doing is horrible and then simultaneously celebrate or think it's anything but a tragedy when Charlie Kirk was killed. You can't think those two things and be logically coherent at all,
Yeah,
or have principles.
it's
It's not
it's a
there.
more it's being morally consistent in your principles. This is, it's a humanist view. I believe in people having an inherent worth, and this whole idea of, I don't know, saying, well, this guy is not believing in my ideas, so thus I can kill him. It's just a really, really corrupted way of looking at the world. And like I said, you can see it in a macro way when you're looking at like wars, and you can see it in a micro way when you're looking at like a political assassination. But like I said, we're all talking about threats to democracy. This is the kind of stuff that I think is the greatest threat to democracy. Not being able to talk to each other, not being able to have a discussion, not being able to just disagree, and not being able to understand why some people are upset. Some people are kind of like, hey, this might be a good thing. It's like, let's understand that. Why do you have that feeling? Why do you think this might help? Do you understand anything about history and how things like this tend to pan out? Like, you'll be lucky if this pans out in, a positive way, because not to say it's never gone good, but 9 times out of 10, when these kind of things happen, tends to spiral. And that's kind of what you're getting at. We're really hoping that nothing happens because of that reason.
Yeah, yeah. I really hope everyone just stays locked in. Um, I mean, that's really something that we struggled in our, microcosm of our group that we have also, where like, if you need to take a time out, if you need to take a step back to kind of think about things and calm down, like everyone needs that, especially after there's a disaster. Um, you know, yeah, people need to make sure that they're making the right decisions when they're doing things and not making things worse. Especially when if you're trying to do something extreme to try and, like grasp at making things better for yourself. Desperate people make a lot of mistakes and you're probably going to get the exact opposite of what you actually wanted. And it's kind of like the devil's promise to you, you know?
Yep. Yeah, it's a complicated situation, but I really think that we need to really take a minute and take a breath, and all of us realize what we're looking at right here. Don't join the death cult of this is civil war, let's fight, because that's a death cult.
Absolutely.
Don't
Absolutely.
join the of hell yeah, he's dead, fuck yeah, because that's a death cult too. You should never celebrate anyone's death. Like, even if it's a serial killer, this is something that you should see as a somber thing, and it's fucked up that we really have to do this kind of thing. Like, if we're talking about like Osama bin Laden, you know what I mean? We really regret. I actually had a Twitter exchange about this, funnily enough, where somebody was saying that, and I was like, and they were saying, well, sometimes you have to put down your dog because your dog is rabid. And I said, well, when you put down your rabid dog, are you celebrating the fact that you put down your rabid dog? Or is it a somber occasion? And are you upset that you had to do this?
Yeah, you're
That
not
dog
over
was
here like, yes,
violent. That
finally,
dog
I put down my dog
was
that was my
biting
best friend.
people. It was attacking people. You know what I mean? But it's still sad that you had to do this. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be something that you take with glee. And to me, that is the difference between justice and vengeance. It's like justice is regretfully have to do this. Vengeance is taking joy in doing it. There's something to that I think is insanely poisonous to you. And I think, we all have to look at it that way. If and I think that's the same, like I said, for both sides that I said, there are death cults. You know what I mean? There is something that you guys need to, you are really sadistically using a death. And then the fact, like, I really just can't get over the fact that it's just in diametrically opposed direction of what the man believed.
Yeah, seriously.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just the craziest part about all of it for me. Like I said, it would be like launching a regime change war on behalf of Dave Smith. You know what I mean? Like, it really would. It'd be like, Somebody shot Scott Horton. Let's launch a regime change war in Iran.
Yeah, because
You
that's
know
what
what I
Scott would have
mean?
wanted. Let's
That's
do
what
this in
Scott
his
would have
honor.
wanted. You know what I mean? Let's do the thing that is like the most unlike thing that he would have wanted. Let's do that.
Mhm.
Let's find the thing he criticized probably the most out of anything. She's literally using the words of the leftists. Hate speech isn't free speech. The direct shit that he exactly, you know, apparently there's some Office Depot that said they wouldn't print out like Charlie Kirk memorial flyers and they want to go after him. I'm like, how's this different from the cake? How is it different than the cake?
If I really wanted to try and make the case, I probably could as to how it's different. At the same time, though,
Free
you could probably go
association,
find.
man.
There's a lot of
Free
printing
association.
areas, places out
There's a
there. You
million
can
and
get
a
them made.
half. Buy a fucking printer, whatever. Like, dude, come on, man. There's a million and a half places that do this. If Office Depot don't want the money, cool. Go give someone else the money then. Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, you're gonna lose the high ground. You know what I mean? The only reason you won was because of how. That's kind of the point that I tell MAGA all the time. Is the only reason that you won is really because of so much of the high ground that was claimed by MAGA because it was abandoned by the left, like the
Yeah,
free
because of how
speech and all of this.
extreme the other side went.
Exactly. So if you abandon it, it will collapse. You know what I mean? Especially if the left embraces it, even if they don't actually do it. Because that'll be how this game will start to be playing. I'm kind of wondering if they're going to do the same thing as the anti-war. Trust us, we'll get rid of all the censorship. Just kidding, we're censoring the other guys.
Well, no, we
It's
would get
like
rid
we're
of
going to
what
stop the
the
wars.
previous
Just good, and we're
administration
going to
was
another
doing.
wars.
Yeah. Well, and
We're
that,
going to
I
have
mean, that
more.
isn't that kind of just like political tit for tat violence? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Yeah.
The alternate
But
dominion.
they're gonna do it in Charlie Kirk's name now. Yeah. We can't have that.
The alternate dominion of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge. This is what Washington was talking about when he was saying why parties was such a issue, was because a lot of times that's what ends up happening is one party in power does a bunch of shit to the other party, and then the second the other guy gets power, he undoes all the shit he was that the other guy did, and then starts doing it to the other guy. And yeah, this you know political revenge game is poisonous to our country. It's a waste of our tax dollars. It's 900 ways. It's just horrific that this stuff isn't ending. It's just kind of being redirected. And like I said, that's my big call to MAGA is, dude, you guys got to hold the line on, you know, free speech. You got to hold the line on a lot of this stuff. You can't be like over here going, hell yeah, this guy got canceled. It's like, yeah, a week ago you were upset that a guy got fired because he called himself a fascist in a Jubilee video. Like, can we have a little consistency here? That's all I'm asking here. You know what I mean? Yeah, Randy Fine is over here going, yeah, people who celebrate, the death of people should definitely be canceled. This is so great. And it's like, dude, you were just bragging about people starving to death, children. You said you were okay with that and you were excited about it and you liked it. Like you went so hard supporting the death of children in Gaza that APAC called you and said chilled out. Think about that. Like
That's pretty
that's
far.
how hard think about that. APAC called you and said, "Dude, you are making us look horrible. Calm the fuck down, man." And then you have the fucking nuts. I'm sorry, that shit pisses me off. To come at what did he say? Oh, maybe a MAGA guy was shooting his gun in the air. Like, dude, that is no crazier than anything you've ever said justifying what Israel's done. None of that is crazier than some of the shit you've said. Don't get me wrong. I don't agree with that either. I think it was a crazy fucking thing for the guy to say. Can't believe he said it. But we live in a free country with freedom of speech, or we don't. So it's time for people to actually look at this as mutually assured destruction and call off the
We
war.
One thing I did want to say, I wanted to mention this at the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about like what could possibly be meant by Pam Bondi coming out with that because she did walk that back a bit later on. But and we probably need to do a whole nother podcast just to talk about this thing. There is kind of an issue with the indirect calls for violence being made using strategies that kind of work around like what would actually call for law enforcement to get involved. That's something we need to have a bigger discussion about and how to actually resolve that because that is a problem. And if there are, these cells of people that are going to start using that to,
Well,
start regularly
we
carrying out
used
political
to we
violence,
used to have a
it's a
really good
problem.
way of handling this. See, this is something that I've said before. It's like while I don't agree with the whole like hate speech argument, I think calling someone an N-word is what we would in the business call fighting words. And if somebody comes up and punches you in the face, then somebody comes up and punches you in the face because you called them an N-word. If I walk up to you and I say, "Hey man, hey bitch, what the fuck you gonna do about that?" That's fighting words. So if you hit me in the face after that, it's not assault. I've incited you to fight.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
there is something to like, no, like there is a way of handling this that I think, if you lettered the law right, you could handle this in a better way. You know what I mean? When you're talking about certain things like that, I think, if you're inciting a fight, you're inciting a fight. But if you're inciting, but that shouldn't be handled from a governmental stance, you know, if
Yeah,
that
I mean,
makes any
honestly,
sense.
after this, what really should happen is like conservatives that are interested in going out and speaking openly, if this is how they're going to start being met when they go out and do that, you're going to have to up the security, like make a wider perimeter around the area where you're going to be.
Yeah, I don't see the
Maybe
point
just
in doing outside events anymore if this is the game here, You're gonna have to
and that's
you're gonna have
unfortunate.
to bring
That's
it
unfortunate.
inside.
But that's kind of the other side of it, like and thankfully it looks like they're like if there is going to be a silver lining from this, it's that I mentioned it to you earlier, but just like the amount of people that have contacted Turning Point USA to schedule for like, hey, let's do an event at my high school, let's do an event at my college. I'm interested in signing up at the local chapter. I guarantee like it's gonna like a majority of the people signing up are gonna be conservatives, but I guarantee you there's some people out there that are more independently minded that are just like, hey, this isn't the type of behavior we need to have, and I'm interested in being on the right side of that.
Yeah,
Let's
I think
actually take this as an opportunity to grow.
I think that's something that people really just don't get is that like this kind of stuff doesn't work the way they think it. Like it's insurgent math, but it's happening here.
Yeah. Yeah, the insurgent math where like if you kill one, then you get 10 more. Um, yeah, it seems like that's what happened, except on a way larger scale. Like they had 60,000 more people like
Well, I
sign up.
mean, it works that way in insurgent math too. If you kill somebody who's really high profile, you get a lot more recruitment out of that than you do, some rando. And like I said, it's just yeah, it's insurgent math. When you take out one, you get five more in their place. Like it's cutting off the heads of the Hydra. You can't kill an idea. This is something that I've explained to people who are on more of the Zionist side where they're just like, well, we have to kill all of the people in Hamas. And it's like, well, you can't kill an idea. The more people you kill in Hamas, the more Hamas members you create. And so, definitionally, you can't do this through killing them. You have to do this through convincing. I mean, even not the Nazi thing. Like, everybody goes back and like, whoa, they killed all the. No, they didn't kill all the Nazis. They convinced them. That's what the whole denazification process was convincing people not to be Nazis. A big part of it was marching them through the death camps. A lot of people don't know this, but it's an interesting thing because like I said, it wasn't I wouldn't say it wasn't known. It's more that like they were kind of don't ask, don't telling with their government. And then when they were forced to look at it, they were like horrified and they were like, holy shit. So, like, that was a large part of the quote unquote denazification, is what they called it, process.
That's
So,
interesting.
like I said, Israel literally made this October 7th video detailing all these horrific things that were done. Like, I think there, would have been a better option of these targeted attacks on Hamas while showing this video to Palestinians and going, "Hey, look, let's not do this shit anymore" from either end. And you probably would have seen, I think, a better reception. This is, what our religion, both of our religions says, turn the other cheek. This is what he's getting at.
Wouldn't that be a really beautiful message to get out there also? And at the same time, you'd be having like get your special ops, like they have all of the like best in class technology to do those sorts of special ops missions, and just go in there and get the people that did it.
Yeah, and then like I said, broadcast that. It's a good. I know it's like I said, by definition, anything meant to change a mind is propagandized is propaganda, but that's some good propaganda right there. It's like, look at what was done to us by Hamas. This is why we're going after these guys and these targeted strikes. We're really doing our best to make sure we don't take anybody out. Any way that you guys can help us, please do, and we will do our best to. Like, there should have been way more of an open hand, not Palestinians or animals. Not one grain of wheat will get into Gaza. Like, this whole thing started from you are all the enemy. You know what I mean? And all that did was help recruit for Hamas. And the reason I know that all that did was help recruit for Hamas is because that is identical to how the American Revolution recruited. Because all of you were the British's enemy, and Britain came in and just started burning whole towns to the ground. And so, like, it just rallied, the colonists to go, let's fuck up the British. So there's something to that. This is not a new phenomena, because and the reason it rhymes throughout history is because it's part of human nature, and we can't deny what is human nature. These things are going to keep playing out. But as always with this podcast, I got to say, man, the number one thing we got to think about is the kids. And like I said,
Absolutely.
I hope to see, people in Charlie Kirk's family step up. I would assume they would.
His wife made a
Grandfathers,
really
uncles.
beautiful speech about this that I
I
really
didn't
liked.
actually see that speech personally, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, grandfathers, uncles, good friends of Charlie really need to step in, and these kids now need 15 fathers since they lost the one. So, like, this is something that I've, quick aside before we cut it. Uh, this is something I've talked about, is that truthfully, the nuclear family is also the culprit for this single motherhood issue. And the conservatives don't want to talk about this. Before, everybody talks about the breakdown of the nuclear family, but we don't talk about what preceded the nuclear family, right? We don't have fathers in the household and then look at the outcomes for these kids. This is very, very, very true. But if you go and you look at the 40s, 50s, 30s, 60s, there was a lot of situations with fathers not in the household too. Why is that? Because they were drafted and killed in wars. So we came up with this whole concept of the nuclear family, and this pushed grandparents out of the house. Households used to have, sometimes four generations in them. And so if the dad did not come home from war, you had the uncles around, you had the grandfathers around, you had other male role models that were always around. And now, when the dad isn't involved, the entire kids, all these kids are running wild now. They don't have that figure
Yeah,
involved.
the wife and the
And
mother that's
so,
left behind is now alone and has to figure that
exactly,
out.
instead of this insane support system that used to exist. So I actually make an argument that the nuclear family itself is a breakdown of the family, and that the goal shouldn't be the restoration of a nuclear family. I think the uh, the goal should be the restoration of generational households, if you're really going to call yourself a conservative,
Absolutely.
because that's That's actually conservative. That's actually what worked. That's, when it came to from a social fabric. And I think a lot of lefties might even listen to me and go, that's actually kind of a good point. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's just it's the family the bug. The family is a very important collective, and it works in a very good way if we have these multi-generational things, because especially like, you didn't have the whole nursing home dynamic. What you had was, the parents were getting older and they couldn't do much but kind of help take care of the kids. And so you had that extra help with the kids in the home while the dad worked, 90 hours a week, or, the grandfather, or, all the men that were in the household all worked, 90 hours a week.
Dude, I gotta be honest that yeah, the topic you're bringing up right now is something that like me and my wife especially have talked about a lot. And like if you want to do it sometime, we could probably do an entire whole nother like hour just talking about that like specific topic because it really is so important. And I totally get what you're saying. Like you don't even have to focus in on like the people that were around Charlie Kirk himself, like the organization, but like when you're looking at like the kids and that family that's left behind now without the dad, yeah, I really pray for them. I pray for them. I pray they stick together. They do what's right by her and the kids, and also doing what's right by Charlie Kirk. And I guess since we're going to be closing it out in a minute, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk.
For sure. Yeah, like I said, rest in peace. The thing I say is, like, I would encourage people to definitely say a prayer for his family, because like I said, and as I also encourage, prayers for all of this stuff, man. Like, we got to bring
Your
peace to the
situation in general.
world. We got to bring peace to the world. Like, we live in Eden. Like, if you go out in nature for 20 minutes, you'll realize that we're still in the garden. We've just perverted it.
Based.
You know what I mean? So, like, we're still in the garden. We're the one fucking it up. Like, go look at nature, man. Go to the beach, go to the mountains. It doesn't matter where you go. It is fucking gorgeous.
Mhm.
It is, nature is so beautiful. You go to the desert, go to, like, it doesn't matter. It's all gorgeous. And like I said, we need to bring, you know, and the best way to do that is to stop treating each other like we don't matter. I think we all have to really recognize each other's humanity. But thanks for tuning in to another episode. Thanks for coming in, Alex Jones, the
Always a pleasure.
conspiracy theorist conservative.
I gotta make myself a tinfoil hat for next time.
That would be hilarious.